Yeah, I mean, I could not care any less about being the favorite or not being the favorite. We all start even par, and I think at times this year I may have gotten overly frustrated. I think it's just part of the game. I think part of the game is controlling your emotions, is controlling your mind, and I've definitely gotten better at that over the years.
What if I told you that golf's biggest scandal didn't involve money, drugs, or cheating, but a moment when the world's most successful player turned against his own fans and ignited a revolution that nearly destroyed the sport he dominated? This isn't about a bad day on the course. This is about the day Scottie Scheffler, a man so calm he makes meditation look chaotic, snapped, not in anger, but in something far more dangerous: moral clarity. By the end of this story, you'll discover how a single gesture exposed decades of institutional rot, why golf legends publicly declared themselves ashamed, and how one athlete's refusal to stay silent triggered a cultural war that split the sport down the middle. But here's what nobody saw coming. The real villain wasn't the screaming fans, the failed officials, or even the broken system. It was something much more sinister lurking beneath golf's pristine surface. The dominoes started falling at Bethpage Black, but they'd been wobbling for years, and when they finally crashed down, they nearly took the entire sport with them.
I'm not here to inspire somebody else to be the best player in the world, because what's the point? You know, this is not a fulfilling life. It's fulfilling from the sense of accomplishment, but it's not fulfilling from a sense of like the deepest, places of your heart.
Scottie Scheffler has always been golf's quiet giant. While other players court controversy or chase social media fame, Scheffler lets his club speak volumes. His swing is poetry in motion, his demeanor unshakable, his results undeniable. But beneath that serene exterior, pressure had been building throughout the 2025 season like steam in a kettle. The signs were subtle at first: a tighter jaw during post-round interviews, longer pauses before answering questions about fan interactions. Those who knew him best noticed the changes, but the golfing world remained oblivious to the internal struggle brewing within their most dependable champion. Professional golf had been evolving rapidly, transforming from a gentleman's game into entertainment spectacle. The PGA Tour desperately wanted louder crowds, more passion, greater television drama. They got their wish, but forgot to consider the consequences when that energy turned toxic.
There's a lot of people that make it to what they thought was going to fulfill them in life, and then you get there and all of a sudden you get to number one in the world, and then they're like, what's the point? And I really do believe that, because what is the point?
The trouble began at Royal Portrush, where Scheffler claimed the Open Championship on hostile territory. Northern Ireland's passionate golf fans had pinned their hopes on local hero Rory McIlroy, and when their dreams crumbled, frustration turned to fury. What should have been Scheffler's moment of triumph became a masterclass in maintaining grace under pressure. The championship had unfolded like a perfectly orchestrated drama until the final act went terribly wrong. For 3 rounds, Scheffler and McIlroy battled through wind and rain, each shot amplified by the thunderous approval or disappointed groans of partisan crowds. The golf was magnificent, the atmosphere electric, the competition everything the sport aspired to represent. But when McIlroy's challenge finally collapsed on Sunday afternoon, something darker emerged from the galleries. Walking up the 18th fairway with victory assured, Scheffler found himself surrounded not by celebration, but by a wall of cold silence punctuated by cutting remarks. The trophy presentation felt more like a trial than a triumph. Spectators who moments earlier had cheered brilliant golf shots now hurled verbal daggers with surgical precision. The contrast was jarring and illuminating. These weren't casual observers or distant critics. These were serious golf fans who understood the sport's nuances and appreciated its excellence. Yet their disappointment had transformed appreciation into hostility, respect into resentment. They couldn't separate their emotional investment from basic human decency. Later, Scheffler would describe the experience as educational rather than devastating. He learned that passion could poison respect, that regional loyalty could override sportsmanship. Most importantly, he discovered that governing bodies were either unwilling or unable to protect their athletes from emotional abuse disguised as fan enthusiasm. The Royal Portrush experience planted seeds of concern that would grow throughout the season. Scheffler began noticing patterns he'd previously ignored: how crowd energy could shift from supportive to hostile without warning, how officials consistently prioritized event logistics over player welfare, how the sport's genteel traditions were being eroded by entertainment industry pressures. The BMW Championship at Caves Valley provided another lesson in institutional priorities. Even as Scheffler dominated the field with a commanding 4-stroke victory, officials found time to penalize him for slow play. The irony wasn't lost on anyone paying attention. The same organization that ignored fan misconduct obsessed over pace of play violations. This moment crystallized something profound in Scheffler's mind. The system protected its image of efficiency, while ignoring threats to basic human dignity. Rules about timing mattered more than rules about respect. The disconnect was jarring, and it planted seeds that would soon bloom into decisive action.
You're like, why do I want to win this tournament so bad? That's something that I wrestle with on a daily basis. It's like showing up at the Masters every year. It's like, why do I want to win this golf tournament so badly? Why do I want to win the Open Championship so badly? I don't know.
Bethpage Black has always been golf's gladiatorial arena. New York crowds bring intensity that borders on hostility even during peaceful times. For the 2025 Ryder Cup, that intensity reached nuclear levels. What began as patriotic enthusiasm quickly devolved into something much darker and more destructive. The tournament arrived amid unprecedented anticipation. America's golf fans had waited years for home advantage in this cherished competition. Bethpage's notorious rough and punishing layout promised to favor aggressive American-style play over European finesse. The stage was set for triumph, but the script went horribly wrong. From the opening ceremony, warning signs flashed like neon. Crowd chants that should have celebrated American excellence instead focused on demeaning European competitors. Traditional golf etiquette, applauding good shots regardless of nationality, disappeared beneath waves of tribal loyalty. The transformation was gradual but unmistakable. The European team, particularly McIlroy, became targets of relentless verbal assault. Every missed putt triggered celebrations that felt more like warfare than sportsmanship. Every successful shot by Europeans was met with hostile silence or open derision. The atmosphere grew so toxic that it began affecting the actual competition. Television cameras captured moments that should never exist in professional sports. Fans making obscene gestures during European backswings. Organized chanting designed to disrupt concentration. Behavior that violated every principle golf claimed to represent. What made it worse was the complete absence of effective intervention from tournament officials. Standing in the middle of this chaos was Scheffler, watching his sport transform into something unrecognizable. The tipping point came when he witnessed fans crossing lines that shouldn't exist in civilized competition. In that moment, something inside America's most successful golfer snapped not into anger but into action. With cameras rolling and thousands watching, Scheffler turned to face his own supporters. His gesture was simple but revolutionary. Hands raised, asking for quiet, demanding respect. It was a captain trying to steady a sinking ship, a leader stepping forward when institutions failed. The image became instantly iconic. Golf's greatest champion standing alone against his own crowd, choosing principle over popularity, integrity over advantage. In that single moment, Scheffler established himself as something more than an athlete. He became a moral voice when his sport desperately needed one. But Scheffler's intervention was just the beginning. His father, witnessing the ugliness firsthand, confronted fans who had targeted McIlroy with particularly vicious comments. His mother maintained dignified composure while chaos swirled around her. The entire Scheffler family became symbols of what golf aspired to be versus,
If I win, it's going to be awesome for about 2 minutes. And then we're going to get to the next week, and it's going to be like, hey, you won 2 majors this year. How important is it for you to win the FedEx Cup playoffs? And it's just like, we're back here again, you know?
what it had become. The immediate aftermath revealed the depth of golf's institutional failure. The PGA of America's crowd control measures proved as effective as umbrellas in hurricanes. Their warnings carried no weight. Their authority commanded no respect. Their systems collapsed under pressure they should have anticipated. The embarrassment reached staggering proportions when the event's master of ceremonies was caught encouraging crowd behavior that directly contradicted stated policies. His subsequent resignation became a symbol of organizational hypocrisy, promoting chaos publicly while claiming to value order privately. Then came the voices that truly mattered. Tom Watson, whose reputation in golf carries biblical authority, issued a public statement that reverberated through every corner of the sport. His words weren't just criticism. They were a declaration that something fundamental had broken. Watson's use of the word ashamed hit like a thunderclap. This wasn't disappointment or frustration. This was moral judgment from golf royalty. When legends express shame about their sport's direction, institutional leaders lose the luxury of denial. Team captains began apologizing for fan behavior, creating the surreal spectacle of athletes taking responsibility for spectator misconduct. The absurdity highlighted how completely normal accountability structures had collapsed. Players were managing crowds that officials couldn't control.
So we really do. We work so hard for such little moments, and you know, I'm kind of a sicko. I love putting in the work. I love being able to practice. I love getting out to live out my dreams. But at the end of the day, sometimes I just don't understand the point.
This crisis didn't emerge from nowhere. It was the inevitable result of years of misguided priorities. The PGA Tour had spent considerable energy battling LIV Golf, while ignoring cultural rot within their own ecosystem. They focused on competitor threats while their own foundation crumbled. The institutional blindness ran deeper than simple oversight. For decades, professional golf had operated under the assumption that its traditions were self-sustaining, that respect and sportsmanship would naturally perpetuate without active cultivation or protection. This passive approach worked when golf remained a niche sport with limited mainstream attention. But as golf sought broader appeal and increased commercial success, its leadership failed to recognize how entertainment industry pressures could corrupt foundational values. They wanted louder crowds without considering what might make them loud. They craved viral moments without contemplating what kind of moments might go viral. The same organization that monitored every second of playtime couldn't manage basic crowd behavior. The same leaders who crafted complex tournament logistics couldn't implement simple respect standards. Officials could calculate precise yardages, but couldn't measure acceptable decibel levels. They tracked statistical performance while losing sight of behavioral standards. The contradiction revealed profound institutional blindness. Golf's governing bodies had become bureaucratic machines optimized for procedural efficiency rather than cultural stewardship. They could organize magnificent tournaments while allowing the soul of competition to deteriorate. Scheffler's intervention exposed uncomfortable truths about modern professional golf. Success had been redefined to prioritize excitement over excellence, entertainment over integrity. The sport had sold pieces of its soul for television ratings and social media engagement. Television contracts demanded drama, sponsors craved buzz, social media algorithms rewarded controversy. Each pressure pushed golf further from its traditional identity towards something unrecognizable. The transformation happened gradually, making it easy to ignore until crisis forced recognition. Corporate sponsors began expressing private concerns about association with chaos and controversy. Golf's carefully cultivated image as a refined, respectable sport was being systematically destroyed by the very people claiming to protect it. Boardroom conversations started focusing on brand risk rather than brand enhancement.
Because I don't know if I'm making any sense or not, but no, am I not? It's just one of those deals. I love the challenge. I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life.
Behind closed doors, Scheffler began advocating for fundamental changes to fan conduct policies. His approach wasn't punitive but constructive. He wanted accountability without sacrificing passion, order without eliminating energy. His vision demanded leadership that had been conspicuously absent. The PGA's initial response followed predictable patterns. Committees would be formed, reviews would be conducted, improvements would be considered. It was bureaucratic theater designed to create the appearance of action while avoiding actual change. Meanwhile, other players quietly rallied around Scheffler's stance. Private conversations revealed widespread frustration with current conditions and growing support for meaningful reform. The world's best golfers were tired of managing situations their employers should control. Live Golf seized the moment to highlight their supposedly superior crowd management, though their claims carried limited credibility given their own controversial reputation. The rivalry between tours added another layer of complexity to an already complicated situation. By early 2026, rumors emerged about revolutionary developments in Scheffler's career trajectory. International promoters reportedly approached him about participating in a neutral tournament series designed to transcend political divisions and focus purely on golf excellence. The concept was simultaneously simple and radical. Events where competition mattered more than corporate politics, where respect was enforced rather than merely encouraged, where golf's traditional values weren't sacrificed for contemporary entertainment demands. Scheffler's response to these overtures remained characteristically measured, but his willingness to listen sent shockwaves through golf's establishment. The prospect of losing their biggest star to alternative platforms forced institutional leaders to confront their own failures. The PGA's reaction revealed their desperation. Leaked discussions about contract modifications and appearance requirements suggested panic rather than confidence. They were trying to bind their premier talent through legal obligations rather than competitive superiority.
Yeah, I could not care any less about being the favorite or not being the favorite. We all start even par, and the tournament starts on Thursday. That's pretty much all that matters.
Public opinion divided sharply along predictable lines. Scheffler's supporters viewed him as golf's moral compass, courageously confronting systemic problems while others remained silent. His critics dismissed the controversy as overreaction to normal competitive passion. But those closest to Scheffler understood the deeper significance. The Bethpage incident had fundamentally altered his relationship with professional golf. This wasn't about thin skin or oversensitivity. It was about core values and institutional integrity. Golf legends like Jack Nicklaus offered measured support for Scheffler's position while advocating for calm resolution. Their endorsements carried enormous weight, legitimizing concerns that officials had tried to minimize or dismiss entirely. The divide within golf reflected broader cultural tensions about respect, accountability, and institutional authority. Scheffler had accidentally become a symbol in battles far beyond sports entertainment. Eventually, sustained pressure forced meaningful institutional response. The PGA announced comprehensive fan conduct reforms, including enhanced security presence, stricter enforcement protocols, and potential lifetime bans for egregious behavior violations. These changes represented progress, but skeptics questioned whether they addressed root causes or merely symptoms. The challenge wasn't creating new rules. It was building culture that made such rules unnecessary. Throughout 2026, tournament atmospheres gradually improved as new policies took effect. Crowds remained passionate, but more respectful. Security became more visible and proactive. Players felt safer expressing themselves authentically. However, the underlying tension persisted. Some events proceeded smoothly, while others revealed that cultural transformation requires more than policy adjustments. Changing institutional culture demands sustained commitment over extended period.
That's why I talk about families being my priority, because it really is. I'm blessed to be able to come out here and play golf, but if my golf ever started affecting my home life or it ever affected the relationship I have with my wife or with my son, that's going to be the last day that I play out here for a living.
As 2026 progressed, Scheffler continued dominating golf courses while navigating his sport's cultural evolution. Every victory carried additional weight as observers analyzed whether reforms were succeeding or merely creating temporary improvements. His interviews grew more philosophical, addressing leadership responsibilities and cultural preservation. Questions extended beyond golf strategy to encompass broader themes about sports integrity and institutional accountability. The golf media began framing tournaments differently, paying increased attention to crowd behavior and security measures alongside traditional competitive analysis. Scheffler's intervention had permanently altered how the sport examined itself. Corporate partnerships evolved to emphasize sportsmanship and respect alongside competitive excellence. Sponsors recognized that long-term brand value required cultural integrity, not just entertainment value. The 2027 Masters provided golf's ultimate test of cultural progress. Augusta National's traditionally respectful atmosphere would reveal whether lessons learned at Bethpage had created lasting change throughout professional golf. When Scheffler walked onto Augusta's first tee that April morning, the applause was thunderous but respectful. Spectators cheered brilliance without demeaning opponents, celebrated success without creating hostile environments for competitors. The tournament proceeded with renewed emphasis on golf's finest traditions, respect for competitors, appreciation for excellence, and understanding that passion should enhance rather than diminish competitive integrity. Media coverage focused extensively on crowd behavior, alongside competitive action, highlighting successful implementation of new standards while acknowledging ongoing challenges in maintaining cultural progress.
This is not the be-all, end-all. This is not the most important thing in my life, and that's why I wrestle with why is this so important to me, because I would much rather be a great father than I would be a great golfer.
Scheffler's courageous stand at Bethpage Black accomplished something unprecedented in modern professional sports. It forced an entire industry to confront uncomfortable truths about its own values and priorities. His willingness to risk popularity for principles demonstrated leadership that transcended athletic achievement. The transformation wasn't immediate or complete, but it was undeniable. Professional golf began remembering its identity as a gentleman's game, while maintaining competitive intensity that made it compelling entertainment. The balance was delicate, requiring constant vigilance and sustained commitment from players, officials, and fans alike. What made Scheffler's intervention so powerful wasn't just its moral clarity, but its practical effectiveness. By refusing to accept toxicity as normal, he demonstrated that individual action could catalyze institutional change when supported by sustained pressure and clear vision. His quiet revolution proved that leadership doesn't always require official authority, sometimes it just requires the courage to act when others won't. The ripple effects extended far beyond golf. Other sports began examining their own fan conduct policies, questioning whether they had similarly sacrificed integrity for entertainment value. Scheffler's example became a case study in athletic leadership, showing how competitors could influence their sports culture without compromising their competitive focus. Most significantly, Scheffler proved that respect and excitement weren't mutually exclusive. The tournaments following the reforms maintained their passionate atmosphere while eliminating their toxic elements. Fans learned they could express enthusiasm without creating hostile environments. Players discovered they could compete fiercely while maintaining mutual respect. The crisis revealed something crucial about institutional change. It often requires external pressure to overcome internal inertia. Golf's establishment had grown comfortable with gradual cultural erosion because it happened slowly enough to avoid triggering immediate action. Scheffler's intervention created a moment of clarity that made continued inaction impossible. His legacy extends far beyond trophies and rankings. It's about having the courage to demand better when everyone else accepts less. It's about understanding that athletic excellence includes moral responsibility, that champions are defined by character as much as capability. The question moving forward isn't whether golf will face similar challenges. It's whether the sport learned enough from this crisis to handle future tests of its character with greater wisdom and stronger leadership. The answer depends partly on institutional commitment, but mostly on whether future generations of players follow Scheffler's example of principled leadership. Golf's soul hung in the balance at Bethpage Black, and one man's refusal to accept toxicity as normal saved the sport from losing itself entirely. That might be the most important shot he ever played, because it reminded everyone that some victories matter more than others, and some defeats teach lessons more valuable than any triumph. Sometimes the most meaningful moments in sports happen between the lines, in the spaces where character meets circumstance and choices define legacies. Scottie Scheffler's moment came when his sport needed it most, and his response ensured that golf's future would be built on foundations stronger than its recent past.